Hello and welcome to the Etch weekly live show. It is the 18th of November 2021 and I'm your host, Adam Burt, for today's episode 62, would you believe it? We're going to talk about all the latest game industry news as usual. We've got gameplay for you from Psychonauts 2, and this week we're celebrating Xbox20. Yay! Happy birthday, Xbox! And we'll be looking back at the legacy of the original Xbox in our segment later on in the show with Dan Thomas. But I'm joined up front by Taya Bilianina. Taya, how's it going?
It is going pretty good. You got my name really well.
Thank you. I've been practicing for several weeks. Tyler's going to talk about the news with us, and we're going to go through some of the biggest stories from this week in the world of games. Are you ready to get started? Should we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Okay, so a bit of a content warning up front for you guys if you're watching the show. This first news story contains some descriptions and at least discussion of sexual assault allegations. We expect the segment to last about 3 to 4 minutes, so if you'd not like to participate in that, if you want to mute us and come back in a bit, feel free to do that now, and we're going to talk about our first news story. So our first news story, unfortunately, is about Activision and Blizzard. As you might have guessed if you've been on Twitter this week, maybe you've seen some of the allegations doing the rounds and the discussion surrounding those things. The biggest, I guess, new bit of information has come out of the Wall Street Journal, where they've been alleging that Bobby Kotick, the CEO, was aware of a number of incidents, including some about himself, that he failed to disclose to investors previously, and we're going to talk about a couple of those. Ty, you talked about this on the show with Dan a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yeah, we briefly kind of covered the news about Jen leaving the company in kind of a bit of a, I guess, for some sudden move. But I think a lot of the news that has come out this week has made it a lot clearer why exactly she made that decision, and I support her 100%.
Yes, so a month after her appointment, O'Neill now alleges that she sent an email to one of Activision's legal team saying, this is an exact quote, "It was clear that the company would never prioritise our people the right way." She says that she was paid less than the man who was co-leading Blizzard with her, and that she had been tokenised, marginalised and discriminated against. There are a number of stories also featuring Bobby Kotick himself. In one case, he settled out of court after threatening to kill a female member of staff in a voicemail. In another, he fired a flight attendant on his private jet after she complained that the pilot had harassed her. Among the many damning reports, and there are a lot of them in this Wall Street Journal report, unfortunately, Activision's HR team found that a studio head had been sexually harassing a woman in his team, and they recommended terminating his employment, and Bobby Kotick personally stepped in to prevent his firing. So a lot of heat on Bobby at the minute, a lot of people rightfully calling for him to go and for drastic change at Activision, which I think we can probably agree on, right, Tyre?
Definitely, and I think there's a lot coming out. There's a lot of pain and trauma that's being revisited for a lot of people at Blizzard, but also across the entire games industry. You know, these are stories that are coming to the forefront, but they're not new and they're not, fortunately, surprising. I'm hoping that this will kind of lead to something different in terms of, you know, seeing some actual action, seeing some consequences, seeing people's, you know, lives and people's mental health be prioritized ahead of all the other things that the business is trying to do. So it's been a heavy one. I've been trying to follow along, trying to kind of see some of the positives in terms of things changing, but I guess we'll see what's going to happen. At the moment, I believe the board at Activision is sticking by Bobby Kotick. They're not recommending that he step down or anything like that. So we'll be following the next developments as closely as we can to hopefully see some justice be done.
Yeah. In addition to all the hot water that he deserves for these allegations, the Wall Street Journal also reports that Kotick knew of these allegations and numerous court settlements, but did not inform the company's board of directors about them. And the question of disclosure is a key part of the investigation into Activision Blizzard by the Securities and Exchange Commission. The regulator is looking into whether they had an obligation, essentially, to inform investors about these incidents before they were made public, and they failed to do so. So they could be in financial trouble as well as obvious ethical trouble there. But let's move on and talk about something a little bit more fun. Say hello in the chat to a few people. Who have we got today? We've got Peter, we've got Ben Gammon, we've got Ben Joy, we've got Miles. Thank you for tuning in. We've got Rob as well. Thanks for tuning in, Rob. We really appreciate it. Our next news story is about the Xbox, and we celebrated this briefly at the top of the show as well. But Xbox is 20 years old, and so is Halo, the original, Combat Evolved. On Monday, the birthday was celebrated in a few ways. We got a live stream looking back on some of the most iconic Xbox moments and a couple of announcements. We'll be discussing the legacy of Xbox more later on in the show, like I mentioned, but here are a couple of stories that came out of Monday's celebration. One big thing we got was 70 new titles on Xbox backward compatibility, including 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, Advent Rising, Manhunt, the Max Payne trilogy, and Otogi, Myth of Demons, to name just a few. And yeah, this is good news, right? More games for people, more old games. Any of these games catch your eye, Ty? Are you excited about any of this backwards compatibility?
I don't actually own an Xbox, but I'm excited for everyone else. Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have that because, yeah, you know, you spend so much time and money on these games. It's good to be able to continue enjoying them whichever way you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Phil Spencer's been in the news this week talking about the importance of preservation of games to the wider industry. Obviously, it's something that Xbox have focused on quite a lot recently, and hopefully they'll continue to do so in the future. Something else that came out of the ceremony, I can't believe we got this far in the show without mentioning it, to be honest. It was spoilt somewhat by the rumours ahead of the event, but Halo Infinite's multiplayer just came out on Monday, even though it was slated to appear originally on December 8th. Early on Monday, the rumour mill began thanks to a number of clues, such as profiles updating on HaloWaypoint.com, and surprisingly, Pringles, the crisp company, offering double XP boosts and basically advertising that the game was going to be coming out on their website, thanks to the whistleblowers at Pringles for revealing the release date to us. It's going pretty well so far. There were some initial teething issues with the downloads, but once those were ironed out, the servers seem to be doing a pretty good job of handling the whole thing. You know, basically the whole world jumping on for some surprise Halo. It's become a massive success on both Steam and Game Pass. So congratulations to everyone at 343 on surprise launching one of the biggest games in the world. Ty, what did you make of this? I mean, it's crazy, right?
It is really amazing, to be honest. I think as someone who's been in games marketing for a little while, you know, it's such a big risk to take to kind of just launch out of nowhere. Even with Pringle, I guess, backing them up, whether that's on purpose or not. But it is amazing. It is amazing. I think it was great to see the excitement of everyone who was waiting for this and wasn't expecting it, including yours specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in checking this out. I played the technical preview, but I just fascinated by it as a case study, I guess. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more. Probably I drill into it at some point on the blog, but it is ludicrous for a game of this magnitude to just release itself with like none of the traditional ramp up that you'd usually get. And I know they're calling it a beta or a beta, but in practice the whole multiplayer portion of the game is in there, like all the weapons, all the maps, all the progression carries over, so it's out basically. And if you want to play Halo, you can. It's free. So yeah, go and check that out, and I'm sure you'll see me online at some point. Our next story is about the Game Awards, which were also announced this week in terms of their nominees, at least. Deathloop leads the pack with the most nominations, and the publisher with the most nominations is Xbox, although many of those are for Deathloop, which due to contractual obligations is currently a PlayStation console exclusive, acquired during the Bethesda deal. The Game of the Year nominees are Deathloop, It Takes Two, Metroid Dread, Psychonauts 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and Resident Evil Village. Other categories include Innovation and Accessibility, Best Narrative, and Best Indie Title, the latter of which will be hotly contested by titles such as Loop Hero, Inscription, 12 Minutes, Death's Door, and Kena, Bridge of Spirits. A record-breaking 7 million votes were cast in the first 24 hours, and the ceremony is set to take place on December 9th. Taya, who deserves to win this? Who got snubbed? Give me your opinions.
I have to admit, I haven't played any of the Game of the Year award nominees from what I've seen. I think
Well,
a lot
good,
of them
good news
are
for you. You can watch us play
expected.
Psychonauts 2, and in a few minutes' time, you'll get to watch some Psychonauts 2. So you'll get that little
There you
bit
go. You can get an opinion. I think it's interesting to not see Forza on there. I think a lot of people were quite surprised that I don't know if they missed out in terms of timings because it was very recently that they came out.
Yeah,
But,
so I think Forza was actually eligible. It is nominated for the Accessibility Award and for Sports and Racing. It does seem like a bit of a snub. It's an interesting kind of, I guess, microcosm of a fact. It's just in the same way that the Oscars don't ever award comedy or horror, the Game Awards feels like it's never going to really recognise a racing game or a sports title in the Game of the Year category. And some fans are very angry about that. I mean, Forza Horizon 5 is technically, by Metacritic standards, which isn't the be-all and end-all, but it is the highest rated game of the year. To not even make the shortlist is a little bit strange. But, it's voted for by a panel of judges. You could see why they maybe wanted to reward other things that were outside of that or a little bit more innovative, arguably. I mean, Forza Horizon 5 is a great game. It doesn't exactly do a lot new. It's really well refined. And it deserves those high scores, in my opinion. But yeah, a bit of a strange one. I mean, do you think a racing game will ever win?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, games are, as different as we are. And I think it's interesting how a lot of the time you can kind of predict what's going to be on the top list because it always kind of seems to follow the same formula. So I wouldn't say never, but I also would like to see a little bit more variety in kind of the games that do get to that point. I mean, I'm really excited about the indie game category. I love indie games. That's kind of where I know a lot more about the industry as well. And it would be nice to see kind of some of especially the kind of double A indies in more of these categories to kind of see all the different exciting things that they're doing at the moment. But yeah, I think it's just a really exciting time. I mean, I'm personally going to be checking into the Game Awards just to see if they're going to be showing Dragon Age. That's
Lots of
my entire
expected.
purpose. So we'll see what goes on there. But yeah, it's fun. I'm really pleased for all the teams who've worked so hard to get these games out to us in a very difficult year.
Yeah, absolutely. Our last news story this week comes from our Games for Good section. So we like to celebrate the ways in which games can be a powerful force for good in the world. And this week we're talking about the charity Special Effect, who have announced they've raised a record total of $800,000 as part of their One Special Day campaign. This is like a one big day of collection and activities and initiatives basically to raise money for the charity work that they do. If you've not heard of them before, they transform the lives of physically disabled people right across the world through innovative use of technology, and at the heart of that is their mission to maximise fun and quality of life by helping people control video games to the best of their abilities if they maybe don't have a traditional physical ability to do so. I've got a quote here from the CEO and founder, Dr. Mick Donegan. All of us at Special Effect are amazed and humbled at the funds raised by One Special Day this year. We're hugely grateful to our friends throughout the games industry who, through their generosity, are not only ensuring that we can carry on meeting the ever-growing demand to help gamers with physical challenges, but also the demand to help developers all over the world to make their games more accessible to all. The campaign will return next year on October 7th, 2022, and you can engage with them anytime, honestly, if you want to go and raise money for them now. They're not going to say no until next year. A great charity, and congratulations to everyone involved. We really happy that's happened, and accessibility is really important to us. So congratulations to Special Effect and to all the people that they will go on to help with that incredible amount of money. Taya, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And hopefully you'll be back on a future week to talk more about the news, but we're going to throw to our pre-recorded segment, which this week is Psychonauts 2, nominated for Game of the Year, you will have just heard, and also obviously a huge part of Xbox's library legacy, the original Psychonauts, and now Psychonauts 2 has joined it. So let's check it out, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes to talk about more about the Xbox and all the things that it did. So stick around. See you soon.
I'm not Employee of the Year.
Hello and welcome. It's another Etch Play video with me, Adam Burt, and I'm joined by Ben Joy.
Hello. How are
How's it
you
going?
doing, Adam?
Not too bad. We're playing Psychonauts 2, the new release from Double Fine Studios, and the sequel to Psychonauts 1, which came out a very long time ago, back in the early 2000s. Long time coming.
Looking for me? Well, come
Yeah,
and get
it's
me.
time between drinks.
Why are you taking so?
So I haven't played Psychonauts 1. Shockingly, I know. But I know
You're fired.
you have played Psychonauts 1.
So Psychonauts has always been about, it's always been a really creative game, and it's about a series of, well, it's about one kid really who wants to be in an organization called the Psychonauts, and they are basically agents who operate with psychic powers and invade your mind to try and steal secrets or solve like global domination plans from villains and stuff. And it's always been famous and synonymous really with really creative level design, and you're seeing a little bit of that here. We're currently inside the mind of a dentist called Dr. Loboto, who's a little bit messed up. He's,
Now, before the procedure, it's very
That's him.
important that we clean out
Okay.
your dentist act. You don't want any dirty. Throw away.
You sure he's a dentist?
he is a dentist. Look at all these teeth.
I guess.
The game's still teaching me some of the basics here, so that's why there's some tutorial style prompts. And it's a platformer primarily, a lot of acrobatic exploring. You spend most of the time in like an open world hub, but you get to go into people's brains to start specific levels. And you have telekinetic powers, such as this one, so I can lift things. Pretty useful during combat to be able to throw things around with your mind. And also you can solve puzzles by moving objects around as well. In this case, putting a tooth back in the hole it belongs in. I just think Psychonauts is, for me, it's synonymous with good writing in games, really clever, really funny. These are figments of imagination I'm collecting. If you're lucky, you might see me collect or resolve some emotional baggage. So you find like suitcases that are crying and they're emotional baggage. If you reunite them with their tags, they become happy. So you have to find like luggage tags to match bags.
What's that light?
Who's this guy?
Zip it back up again.
That's Coach. I'm trying to think about how I can explain Coach. He was a major character in the first game. In fact, you spend the tutorial level of Psychonauts 1 in his brain, which is World War II themed, or World War I themed. He's a little bit messed up. I mean, everyone in Psychonauts has got stuff going on, you know. There's all sorts of mental health issues at play in Psychonauts games, and one of the interesting things, I guess, about the big gap between Psychonauts 1 and Psychonauts 2 is we've maybe come on a little bit as a society in terms of how we talk about mental health since then. So the first game wasn't offensive by any means. I think it was still, you know, at the time, just how we would talk about mental health. But they've definitely taken a step forward with Psychonauts 2 in terms of the representation and sensitivity, I guess, to some of these issues, which mirror real-world issues. I guess we can show off some combat here.
Nice.
These are censors who try and kick you out if you don't belong. They try and get rid of thoughts that don't belong in people's brains.
Right.
And yeah, you can just throw stuff at them. That's what I usually
So
do.
is this purely single-player campaign, or
Yeah,
is there any
all
multiplayer
single-player
aspect to it?
campaign. It was originally crowdfunded, actually, and now they're owned by Microsoft. So this is one of those weird ones where Psychonauts 2 is available for PlayStation 4, but the studio that made it are owned by Microsoft. There's no official PlayStation 5 version. They weren't that generous, but you can play it on PlayStation 5 through backwards compatibility. By all accounts, it runs better on the Xbox. There's no conspiracy theory there. I think that's just probably symptomatic of the amount of effort they put into the Xbox versus the other versions based on who owns them now.
And this was day one on Game Pass, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So it's first party now, part of Microsoft, so all their games are first party day one Game Pass at the minute. Including this one, which, I mean, yeah, this is worth a month of Game Pass on its own, because I think this is a great game.
Duly noted. Oh, there you go. There's some emotional
baggage. I think there's some in this room. Oh, there it is. So there's some emotional baggage.
This guy needs a duffel bag tag.
And his tag is over here. So start of the game, it's basically the easiest one.
Pretty easy.
Usually there's some backtracking involved, or you have to find a secret area to find the tags and those sorts of things.
Right.
Bit of acrobatics. One point of contention, I guess, for some people is that Psychonauts 1 was famously difficult. The platforming is quite hard. This game is definitely not that. It's still challenging. The controls sometimes get in the way a little bit. There you go. He's happy now.
Yay!
But they've made big strides in making the game easier, including, we talked about this on the show a little while ago, adding a full invincibility mode. So if you're really not sure whether you can get through this, but you want to experience the story, you can do so. You can just go in there and turn that on, and you'll be able to experience all that the story has to offer. And yeah, I mean, the creativity in here is something to behold. It's every time I start a level, I'm just like, I've got no idea what I'm walking into. It could be anything. There's levels that are mashups of hospitals and casinos. There's levels that are bowling alleys that are inhabited by a city of tiny germs who are all getting destroyed by an apocalypse, which is, a washing up liquid bottle coming to wash them away. And everything in between. Basically, they've done stuff in this game that you would just never think of yourself. Not very good at this part of the tutorial. One of my favourite levels, which we're not going to show here unfortunately, is when you end up on a MasterChef style cookery show with 3 puppet goats as judges, who are very particular about the food they want to be served, and the food is all sentient. So you're chopping up and cooking food, which is like, at one point there's a pig. So this is pretty messed up. Like you're actually eating me. And then you overfeed these goats until they explode and vomit everywhere.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
I've got the situation under our control. Just find us a way out of here, quickly.
Yeah, don't bother with them little mooks. You want to go for the gold. You gotta grab the big boys. Help me carry this one, will you, Frankie?
I'm not sure why the 2 fairies in this are New York
mobsters.
Gangsters. Yeah.
I mean, I like it. It's a creative choice that I can get behind.
I think that's the thing about Psychonauts 2. It's a series of creative choices that you're like, don't really understand how they arrived at this conclusion, but I'm glad they did.
Come on, Frankie,
big
put
fan.
a little muscle into it.
I think they're expecting me to shoot the Tooth Fairy here.
They got me too, Frankie. The mooks.
But yeah, we just wanted to give you a little look into the weird and wonderful world of Psychonauts 2. It's available on Game Pass, like I say. It is worth checking out. Probably, well, definitely one of the best platformers of the year, and arguably one of the best games of the year so far. Really worth your time, especially if you like anything that you've seen so far. And we'll throw back to the studio. See you next time.
Bye.
It's a mess in there. Here, rinse and spit.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching the Etch Weekly live show with me, Adam Burt, and him, Dan Thomas. Dan,
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm very good, thank you, Adam. How are you?
I'm good because we are celebrating 20 years of Xbox. The official date was Monday, 15th of November, was the 20-year anniversary of the original Xbox console launching in the US, and we're celebrating. We're in a celebratory mood. We haven't got any more Xbox-themed birthday cake, but we are going to talk about the legacy of the Xbox and about what it meant to the games industry, talk about some of our favourite moments, our favourite features, and yeah, does that sound good to you?
Sounds very good. I feel like you've really got into the 20 years of Xbox spirit, of getting a real fanboy vibe on Team Xbox from you, this show.
I mean,
Which is good. They deserve it. 20 years.
Yeah, and they've done a lot this week. You know, there's a lot of Xbox-related news, a lot of Xbox-related content to talk about. if you're interested in more news from us in general, make sure you check out tomorrow's roundup, which is going to be posted on etchuk.com/play. We're rounding up all the biggest news stories from the week in the world of games in text form, including, I imagine, lots of Xbox-related stuff. So let's talk about the Xbox. I mean, the origins of the Xbox, 2001, Microsoft had a desire to compete in the living room, inspired directly by Sony claiming that PlayStation 2 was going to be on par with personal computers. And obviously at the time, they had worked on some keyboard and mice, but other than that, Microsoft was a software company, not a hardware company. So it was a bit of a massive uphill battle internally that eventually won the support of Bill Gates, who was then the CEO of Microsoft. They're actually releasing a documentary really soon called Power On, all about the history of how the Xbox got made, which I'm sure will be worth checking out when it comes out. But what do you remember about that launch, Dan? Do you remember the Xbox coming out?
I do. I actually remember getting a magazine, I think one of the first Xbox magazines before the Xbox was available, with a Show on My Edge, a VHS preview of all that was going to be unleashed upon our lives in the new era of Xbox gaming. And yeah, I was very, very excited for it. And I don't recall seeing a lot of the kind of I've seen it since, kind of like the whole The Rock appearing with Bill Gates and all of those kinds of things, but obviously we didn't have in ubiquitous internet video at the time. So yeah, those sorts of things I've learned about it since. But yeah, I do remember being particularly excited for it. It certainly was everywhere in the more traditional media formats.
Yeah. And obviously the Xbox kind of ensured a competitive marketplace. We had Sega with the Dreamcast starting to maybe fade away a little bit. I mean, Dreamcast was a fantastic console that was killed before its time, if you ask me. But definitely there was a bit of a void there in terms of somebody who was, trying to take it directly to Sony, trying to challenge them on their terms. Nintendo were always there doing their own thing regardless. But I think that competition is good for the industry, right? It's good for consumers, it's good for everybody, for there to be a competitive games maker market.
Definitely, it was good to see kind of the new era of major brands battling it out when it was, like I say, kind of historically was Nintendo, Sega. That was kind of like the late 80s, 90s sort of battle, and then obviously PlayStation came in, so it was definitely high time for somebody to step up, and it stimulates so much more innovation and pricing models and all these kinds of things. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other ways that Xbox really influenced the console landscape is that it included a built-in hard drive, a significant one as well. It was at the time pretty sizable, which obviously is something that every major console since has adopted and has really led to kind of a change in the way that games are bought and stored and all those sorts of things. You think about the rise of the digital download, which just wouldn't have been possible without significant hard drives inside consoles themselves. And then there's, I guess, the elephant in the room is Halo, without which the Xbox might have died a very early death. It might not have survived that long without it. But Halo set new standards for first-person shooter blockbusters, especially on console, standardizing dual-stick controls, bringing networked multiplayer to consoles, which is something that had previously been the domain of PCs only, and just being that kind of huge franchise, became a mid-light launch franchise for them with Halo 2 and 3, a real focal title for the Xbox to this day, really. I mean, Halo Infinite has got its own challenges, obviously, but it's still a marquee title for the brand, isn't it?
Absolutely, and yeah, exactly as you said, kind of would the Xbox have... Would we still have Xbox today if they hadn't have unleashed a Halo on us at the same time as the console?
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Do you have fond memories of Halo? I know that I do. I talk about that all the time on the show.
Yeah, no, very much so. And yeah, absolutely. It was synonymous with wanting an Xbox. It was largely because look at Halo. And I got super hyped for every release in that series. Even the modern ones, I still get excited for. Yeah, Infinite, even Halo 5, and yeah, that's just I don't know how much of that is hanging on the nostalgia of the originals, but yeah, I definitely think so.
One of the other ways that the Xbox was a bit of a sea change for consoles was the way that it really pioneered online services. So the original Xbox had a built-in Ethernet port, which was a bit of a gamble really, but kind of paid off. They kind of bet all the chips on broadband adoption, becoming a huge deal in the home, which it did. We know that it skyrocketed. And Xbox Live was launched, as well as setting the standard in terms of how online services would work on a console. It was arguably one of the first major media subscriptions. This was before the days of Netflix or Spotify. People weren't really paying for things monthly or yearly that got them media access, and Xbox Live was kind of part of that initial wave. Obviously, a lot of people have opinions about that, especially nowadays, whether that's still justified, as the industry has moved on a lot since then. But at the time, it was a huge deal, obviously a major success for them. Do you remember getting involved in Xbox Live? Was that?
I do. I think more so with the 360, or certainly later, because 2001. We were only at the dawn of kind of home broadband, really. I'm pretty sure it wasn't that a lot of internet connectivity was still over dial-up, and certainly the download speeds and things weren't what they are today. But no, that, as you say, absolutely pivotal and really shifted the landscape for what we expect from console gaming. Yeah,
and then obviously, so Xbox Live, the service, launched in 2002, about a year later, and then really there was games like MotoGP and stuff you could play, and Ghost Recon, but Halo 2, coming hot off the heels of Halo 1, which helped sell the console, Halo 2 really helped to sell the service and became, obviously, a worldwide phenomenon. The Xbox was only around, and this is quite a strange thing to think about, because we think about it as having quite a big impact, but it was only their primary console for 4 years before it was replaced by the Xbox 360. But had a relatively amazing library given its short life. I know it was, in terms of generations, it was up against the PlayStation 2, which has arguably the best games library of all time. But they had a lot of great games on the Xbox, and I thought we would maybe have a chat about those. Whether you've got any particular fond Xbox memories, whether they're underappreciated Xbox game gems. What games do you think of when we talk about the history of the Xbox?
Yeah, it's when you kind of mention about underappreciated games, I was thinking back, and like I said, it was a short window, and for me, it was kind of a period of my life. I was at university, starting a business. I was quite busy, but which is why Halo sticks out so much. Like that was the one focal point, and there was a lot else going on. But I do also remember, and it's certainly not what I would consider. Well, I guess in that short window, any Xbox title is underappreciated because there was only a short window of time for them. Project Gotham 2 sticks out as a standout memory for me, because that was kind of one of the games that I'd played a lot of on the Dreamcast, as you mentioned, and then it launching on the Xbox kind of showed the step change in, I guess, the generations. So that stands out. As a university student, ISS 2, a football game that wasn't particularly a great
Good.
game. No, it wasn't, and it was like they only really there was there was like 7 or 8 different international superstar soccer games, but that was the only one that came out on Xbox. So that got a lot of attention in my university life. But I think the I would say underappreciated is the user interface, the dashboard of the original Xbox. Like up until that point, we'd had obviously Nintendo, Sega, the Dreamcast being kind of the most recent thing. Like it was all quite flat and cute, shall we say, and it just felt like a real. It was also not that far after kind of the Matrix, so it kind of maybe following that green.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Immersive virtual world, and I was just looking at I was just watching some YouTube videos of the original Xbox Dash, and I just think it was brilliant. It was so much different. It was like 3D, and you kind of zoomed into places and outer spaces. So yeah, I think Xbox UI is the underappreciated hero in my eyes.
Yeah, I missed the dashboard blades from the 360 era. One of mine is Crimson Skies, I think, is a game. I can't believe they've not rebooted this at some point. But Crimson Skies was really great, and the folks home can see a bit of it now. A really great plane dogfighting game set in an alternate history, and that was fantastic. Jet Set Radio Future is a game that I have a lot of affection for. We've talked about that on the show before, I'm sure. But really, you talked about, picking up the torch from Sega, and we know that some staff, like Peter Moore, went from Sega to Xbox. There's also a lot of kind of like, Dreamcast was just like, have my games, continue on without me. I'm not going to make it. And we see that with games like Phantasy Star Online as well, and all those sorts of things, which I think is really fascinating. So Jet Set Radio Future is definitely another one for me. I spent a lot of time with. I actually got that on. I had the bundle that came with Sega's GT Rally 2002 and Jet Set Radio Future on like a combined disc, which was really nice.
Do you remember getting your original Xbox?
Yeah, I do, because I got it for Christmas, and it was Christmas after it came out, and I remember I was incredibly ill. Like, I couldn't really eat or do anything, so I was like, guess I'm gonna play this.
How convenient.
Yeah, I remember I tried to eat a Dairy Milk Celebration, a single one, or a Dairy Milk Hero. I put it in my mouth, swallowed it, threw it straight back up, and I was like, this sucks. But
do you get so excited around these launch? I seem to think you've been ill recently around the launch of Forza Horizon 5. Maybe
that's it.
Allergic to excitement.
I mean, if I was, I never would have got through Halo 3's launch otherwise. So yeah, I had the console, I had that demo disc, I had Halo, which was the primary reason I wanted it. I was like, just give me Halo, I don't care about anything else. I'll play the first one level of Halo over and over again. I would be happy with that. And I had Splinter Cell as well, which I didn't really get on with. You know that I hate stealth games, but at the time I didn't know that. I thought it was very impressive visually and all those sorts of things. I know that's a popular franchise that people wish would come back as well. One last rogue choice from me, a game that everyone else I think has forgotten. You remember a game called Kung Fu Chaos? What a great game that was.
I don't remember Kung Fu Chaos specifically, no.
There was so many games on the Xbox and the PS2 as well, to be fair, that were just like these party games where you just fight little characters, and they were like all just living in the shadow of Smash Brothers, I guess. And nothing really had this kind of, purchase power that did. You had things like Whacked on the Xbox as well, and Fusion Frenzy. They're all in this kind of niche of like.
I did look. I was like, when I was trying to see like what are some underappreciated gems. I was like, what fighting games were there? And I was just reams and reams of like, I don't remember any of these.
Dead or Alive. That was classic on the Xbox as well. And then obviously, we've talked about that Halo was such a huge part of it. Like so many Halo memories, whether it's LAN memories, whether it's Xbox Live memories. I remember we did have a LAN party for a friend of mine's birthday, and just that being the most exciting thing in the world to play Halo with 12 of us on 3 consoles just felt ridiculous. And look at us now, playing multiplayer with hundreds of people online all the time.
And nowhere near as good as we thought we were.
Well, yeah, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. I mentioned the roundup. If you like hearing news about the industry, you like hearing from us, you can check out etchuk.com/play every single Friday, and you will get a text dose of it in blog form. You can just read it and look at the pictures and watch the videos if you want to as well. We're always here every Thursday at 4 p.m. You can follow us on Twitch if you don't already. There should be a button down there somewhere if you're not already a follower. Check it out. We go live with this every Thursday. Sometimes we do other stuff as well. It's wonderful to have you here. We love you guys. Having you guys in the chat is always nice as well. And if you're watching us on YouTube, which is perfectly valid, even though it's late, you're catching up on YouTube, you can subscribe on there as well, and you'll get notified whenever we post new videos, clips, and little bits of insight as well on there. Dan, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your fanboying.
You're welcome. I would also like to say thank you to Ben Joy for joining me to check out Psychonauts 2, and to Taya Bilianina for joining in for the news today. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Don't miss it. See you next time.